Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. I'm Kristen, and you've stumbled into a dark and spooky place to hang out and do nails together. Today I'm building some intense nails inspired by the 1922 movie by F.W. Murnau, Nosferatu, A Symphony of Horror. But we're not just doing nails today, we'll also be learning some fun facts about this classic film. If you like this video, if you'd like to see more content like this, please like and subscribe. Now let's get back to color and get into this set. I won't be talking too much about the process of making the nails because I have a lot of points that I want to cover talking about the theme of the nails. Okay, let's chat about how this all came about. So, my favorite streaming service is Shudder, and they have a series called The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob Briggs. And in case you didn't know, Shudder is an all-horror streaming service. And Joe Bob is this mildly controversial cowboy who's incredibly knowledgeable about films and horror films in particular. On this show, we watch a movie with Joe Bob, and he offers up just a huge amount of information about movies that I feel like I would never know otherwise. All of the fun information that I'm going to share with you today comes courtesy of Joe Bob. So that's basically how this idea came about for me. I was watching The Last Drive-In, Nosferatu, and I just learned how badass Nossi is and thought this would be a really cool idea. He has some really sick nails and was due for an upgrade. Nosferatu is the first horror film to also be considered art, and it was a masterful hit during the 1920s. The movie itself is very connected to occultism. So the founder of the studio that made Nosferatu was also a famous occultist. And at the premiere, it was promoted as the first true occult movie. This guy was heavily involved with how the movie looked and how it was promoted because he wanted to imbue it with as much occult symbolism as he could. And apparently, that guy was even connected to Aleister Crowley, who's a famous British occultist, so, it was the real deal. The director, F.W. Murnau, was an openly gay man who loved to break the rules, both in the movies and in society. Like, how amazing is that? Like, we love him. F.W., you are a baddie. And Nossi also reads a lot like a bisexual baddie. There's definitely a lot of sexual energy in that movie. Joe Bob even says that if at any point you're like, I wonder if that's a sexual reference, the answer is a resounding yes. FW was considered a technical genius, and he was totally ahead of his time. He hated artificial sets, and at the time, that was standard practice, what everybody else was doing. So he went to great lengths to shoot the entire movie in real locations. There's even a castle that's a real castle built back in the 13th century. How amazing is that? Okay, now let's get into some drama. So, a few days after the premiere of Nosferatu, Florence Stoker, who is the widow of Bram Stoker, the author of Dracula, because, Nosferatu is basically the story of Dracula. And she was furious when she saw this, and she embarked on a mission to assert all of her legal rights to the ownership of the Dracula story. The filmmakers never expected this because they openly credited Dracula as their source material and made several changes to the story. So good old Florence Stoker was a woman on a mission. She relentlessly went after them, which ended up being like a fiery 3-year litigation, and it bankrupted the production company. The court ruled in Florence's favor, and ruled that all the copies of Nosferatu were to be turned over to her and destroyed. Can you believe that? I just thought that, she would get some money, get the royalties or whatever, but to actually try to suppress and destroy the film is just, I don't know, it just seems mean, right? Luckily for us as a society, a few illegal copies made their way over to the United States and other countries where the court order could not be imposed. And ta-da, we have our first cult movie. How fun is that? Not just the first occult movie, but also the first cult movie. Joe Bob credits the restoration to brilliant archivists for managing to piece together the film from different copies and to piece together the score as well. And let me tell you, the score is brilliant. It's just incredible. One last note about Florence Stoker. Apparently, up until her death in 1937, she was still trying to destroy all the illegal copies of this movie. Okay, let's take an intermission to talk about the nail set for a second because I feel like I need to explain myself about something. I had this plan to do, I wanted those two nails to look like Nossy's teeth, and I was going to do a black ombre down, and I have never done this with acrylic before, and pretty immediately figured out that I didn't know what I was doing and couldn't get the effect that I wanted, so I filed it all off and started again, but decided to just paint on the ombre. Initially, I kept the black pretty close to the upper quarter of the nail, and the majority of it was white, and it just didn't sit well with me, so the next day I filed it all off again and extended the black down further, and that's when it came together for me, and I let myself continue with the rest of the set. I just felt like I had to explain that so you're not wondering what the fuck I'm doing. Okay, let's get back to learning about the movie. So, in case you were not aware, Nosferatu is a silent film, meaning that it had title cards to assist with telling the story. But our boy FW hated title cards. I love this dude. He thought that movies could tell a story on images alone. Nosferatu had a limited amount of text. And 2 years later, FW would prove this idea when he made a movie called The Last Laugh, and it had no title cards, and it is considered one of the most technically groundbreaking films in history. Nosferatu is basically Dracula, so we all know the story. I'm not going to get into it in detail, but I am going to be talking about parts of the story. The main male character is actually so useless. Like, he has zero intuition and just bumbles right into Nossy's fangs. But his wife, on the other hand, has a psychic strength and knows instinctively that her husband's in danger. At one point, she even uses her mind power to fend off Nosy from killing her dim-witted husband. She's the best, we love her, and she's the real star of this movie. As the film progresses, Nosy becomes more and more powerful, and we're shown more and more of his features. The actor who played Nosy is Max Schreck, and he did all his own makeup effects. He loved doing makeup and was exceptional at old age and grotesque-looking makeup, and he would also always be eager to play those types of characters. He was also really good at contorting his body. The film did receive some criticism from disability advocates along the lines of body shaming, and it makes sense because from that perspective, if you use body distortion, physical disabilities, kind of to indicate that that person is corrupt and evil, I think that that's something valid and something that still needs to be thoughtfully considered today, 100 years later. And yeah, back to the nails for a second. I am painting the backs of them as well because I just figured Nossi's a bad bitch and he wouldn't want the underside of his nails looking like, that fleshy color. So we're making him more modern. I think it's good. He'd like it. Okay, we've made it through the hardest and most tedious part of the nails. Aren't they looking wild? So spooky, so Nosy. Anyway, we can move into the fun part, which is decorating now, and I'll just keep regaling you with fun facts. So back at Nossi's castle, he's been basically suckling on the dimwit for a while, basically until he builds up his strength. And once he's at full power, I guess, he basically packs up a bunch of coffins full of dirt and rats and smuggles himself onto a ship. The ship is headed back to the town where the wife is anxiously awaiting her husband's return, but instead a different visitor is on the way to her.
I can feel the blood creeping up from the heathens. Got will, got fight, got pride, got reason. If they wanna go eat, then you know I'm gonna feed them. If you're coming for me, hope you're ready for a demon. I got
The parts of the movie that take place on the ship are my favorite. So basically, Nossi is hidden in the ship, but he sneakily starts killing off the crew members one by one.
so freezing, so cold, behold, frostbite, they feel.
When the frightened and concerned captain realizes he's the only one left and there seems to be some sort of dark force on the ship, he ties himself to the wheel. When night falls upon him, Nossi slowly and terrifyingly creeps up and approaches the captain, seemingly to kill him, and a title card pops up and says, "The death ship had a new captain." Like, how fucking badass is that? I literally died. I was roaring. It was incredible. The ship then slowly drifts into the harbor. Nobody is alive. Nobody is on it. Only the captain, who is tied to the helm, and the ship itself is completely infested with rats. The villagers believe a plague beset the crew, but we know better. And as night falls again, Nossi grabs his coffin and sneaks into town, setting up shop in the house right across from the main characters. And he's coming for the wife, who has become psychically bound to him. Back to the nails for a second. They're turning out pretty nice. I just finished studding out that entire pinky. Isn't it glam? Do you think Nossi would approve? Let me know down below. Next up for the nails, I'm going to be painting some occult symbols on them. So the first one I'm doing here is a upside down cross, and I wanted them to look kind of imperfect, I guess. I wanted them to have this kind of sketchy drawing style, which is just kind of like more my style of art. I hope you're enjoying all the information so far. I know it's a lot, but honestly, the Joe Bob special has so much more information. I'm really just scraping the tip of the iceberg there, so I highly recommend, especially if you have Shudder, to check out that show. Definitely watch Nosferatu. I think it's worth it if you, appreciate the art and the film history of it all. The way Nossi meets his demise is pretty amazing. Basically, he's going for the wife, and she seduces him into biting her all night long until the sun comes up. And at that point, it's too late. He tries to leave, And, the sunlight hits him and he's toast. I'm going to go through a few more facts about the original 1922 Nosferatu, and then I'm going to move into a little bit of information from the Werner Herzog remake from 1979. So our boy F.W. Munau died in a car accident when he was only 42, and he had just signed a 10-year deal with Paramount. So it was a very tragic, unexpected death. In his career, he made a total of 21 films, and 8 of them have been lost to time. And shockingly, Nosferatu, played by Max Schreck, is only in the film for 9 minutes, but his presence totally dominates the entire movie. Okay, moving right along. In 1979, Werner Herzog remade the 1922 film and called it Nosferatu, the Vampire, with a Y. I'm not going to be showing any clips of that one or talking too much about it because, honestly, I don't want to fuck with Herzog. One of the biggest differences between the old version and the new version is that Herzog had way more rats. How many rats, you might be asking? Well, Herzog ordered 11,000 rats, okay? 11,000 black rats in particular. And the city that they were filming in was not having it. And Herzog ended up having to do up and sign all these contracts, basically saying that he would keep the rats completely under control and no rats would escape the filming areas. When the rats arrived from a lab in Hungary and they opened them up, they discovered that they were all white instead of black. And that just was not going to fit the color theming of the movie. Herzog told his special effects guy that he needed to figure out a way to turn all these white rats black. So special effects guy goes and finds a factory that produces hair dye and shampoo, and where they are experienced with rat testing. So they basically create a contraption where the rats are in cages and dipped into a vat of dye. After that, they would be washed off with warm water and then blow dried. Once this process was completed, the rats actually looked more gray than black. And then it didn't really matter anyway because they all started licking the dye off of themselves and each other. In the movie, they still look kind of white, and I noticed them licking off the dye while I was watching it. This next part is really questionable, but Herzog insists that no rats out of all 11,000, none of them escaped or died. To sum up the Herzog version, it's cinematically stunning. It's completely beautiful, and Klaus Kinski, who plays Nossi, is genuinely scary in his scenes. You can tell so much love and care and honor and respect went into remaking that film. Oh, and the scene at the end where the wife seduces Nossi into biting her all night long, it has the sexuality ramped up to a 10 in the Herzog version. It's so well done. And, if you're gonna watch the original one, why not? Why not do the double feature and watch them both? In conclusion, Nossi is a bad bitch who deserved an updated set of bad bitch nails. And today we honor the Nosferatu movies and their history with this nail set. I'm so curious to hear your thoughts. Please leave a comment below and let me know. And if you made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. You are the absolute best. I added a few more studs and decorations, some piercings, and apparently I forgot to film that. So here's some extra footage. Thanks again. Please give me a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.